we don't want people to really have to think too hard about how to treat a situation. We tell them that in every situation, treat it, when you come to a difficult decision, what would you do if it was your mother or your father or a loved one who was either buying the car or selling the car? And by doing that, you end up doing the right thing all the time. And it might not be financially the best move every time, but we don't treat each transaction as necessarily a financial transaction. We treat it as an opportunity to create a remarkable experience and have that guest come back to us over.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow? How would you describe the connection you have with the members of your executive leadership team? Connection. Do you think about how well you guys know each other? How you understand each other, what they're going through on a day-to-day basis or week-to-week basis? One of the things that I see companies that are growing fast, building out that executive leadership team is they want increased alignment with their leadership team. So today we're going to talk about the ways that you can increase alignment with your leadership team. We have a special guest. He is the co-founder of CarLotz. We have Michael Bor. They grew astronomically fast, a couple of years running. They've been on the Inc. 500 list. They were 439. They were 435 in 2019, and they have over 160 employees. When you have that many souls to take care of, you want to make sure your executive leadership team is well connected. You want to make sure there is alignment. And today we're going to talk about some of the unique elements that they do every week and every day to make sure that they have this connection and increase the alignment of the leadership team. One of the things I like about this is we get very specific about how they structure that weekly meeting and the elements inside that meeting that allow them to feel more alignment and connection with each other and understand each other. It may be something different than what you're doing today, and I would challenge you to include something like this so that you can have what you want most, which is that alignment with your leadership team. So before we jump into the interview, I want to remind you, if you haven't already checked out the training we have, I keep saying this over and over, but not enough of you are really taking action on this. Do you want to be a better leader? Do you want to create a team of A players? Well, go get the free training to avoid the 3 mistakes that you are making inside your leadership. I've seen every company making one of these mistakes, so it's likely that you're making one, maybe 2, or all 3. Just go to genehammett.com/training. You'll get that right away. It's absolutely free. Help you become the leader that your team craves. Just go to genehammett.com/training. Now here is Michael. Michael, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I am excellent. We are excited to have you here at Growth Think Tank. We're going to have a conversation about leadership and culture and growth. Before we get into it, tell us a little bit about CarLotz.
Sure. CarLotz is a company that my co-founders and I started about 9-10 years ago. Fundamentally, it's a consignment store for cars. We started the business thinking that it was purely a retail concept. So you might be dissatisfied with the trade-in offer that your dealer gave you. You might be dissatisfied with the concept of selling it yourself, trying to list the car and have strangers call you. And so you'd bring your car to us and we would sell the car for you, and you'd end up with thousands more than you otherwise would if you took the dealer trade-in number. And we started that way. And what we learned as we grew the business is there's quite a bit of demand for that service. There's an even greater demand for that service for the business customer, business seller. So there are huge fleets and rental car companies and banks, other financial institutions, other dealers, anybody who otherwise would sell a car at an auction. We take those cars, we recondition them, and we retail them, and the sellers get thousands more than they otherwise would have. So while we still have the consumer consignor as our selling client, the bigger portion of our business is now commercial consignors that are selling cars through us. We have stores in 5 states, 8 stores. We're pretty much east of the Rockies, and hopefully continuing to grow, so we'll be everywhere very soon.
Michael, how many employees do you have?
We have 160.
No, I know that it's hard to lead that many souls to the next level. And I know that you guys have been through a tough time through coronavirus. Uh, when you think about kind of the foundation that you created as a company and you know what you've been through and as you start to dig out of this hole that this has put into us, what about the people in your leadership do you really are proud that you invested in?
Well, I mean, from the beginning, we knew we were entering an industry that is a bit maligned. There's a reason the used car salesman is a cocktail party joke for the most part, and we knew that going in. But it's really, we really built this business to not be part of that culture, and so it was very important as we built this business to stick to a set of core values, and for us, that's transparency, integrity, service, and fun. And that's something that as we studied the industry before we dove in head first, we realized those are really key values that this industry is not known for. Now, I don't want to say we're the only ones that are doing it the right way. There are plenty of, high performing, best in class used car retailers out there, but it's still a cocktail party joke to be a used car salesman. And we're doing everything we can to ensure that our people and our guests feel the exact opposite when they come to our store. And it's really because of our core values that run through everything we do.
We were looking at some of the ways that you do values before we turned on the recorder here. And you talked about how it's not just something that you do once in a while, but it's completely ingrained in the everyday. What does ingrained in the everyday do for you?
Yeah, I mean, what it really does is it limits the amount of thinking we have to do about how to treat unusual situations that pop up. We do thousands and thousands of transactions. What's interesting about our business is when we sell a car, we actually have two clients or two guests. We have the seller and the buyer. So every car transaction is really two experiences that we're creating. And we need to, so we have a lot of transactions. We have a relatively young and fresh teammate base. And so we don't want people to really have to think too hard about how to treat a situation. We tell them that in every situation, treat it, when you come to a difficult decision, what would you do if it was your mother or your father or a loved one who was either buying the car or selling the car? And by doing that, you end up doing the right thing all the time. And it might not be financially the best move every time, but we don't treat each transaction as necessarily a financial transaction. We treat it as an opportunity to create a remarkable experience and have that guest come back to us over and over.
Hold on for a second. Michael just said something really smart, that values are a tool that limits the time we invest in making decisions. Let me explain how that works inside of organizations. If you have values and you're not living them day in and day out, you're missing an opportunity. Because when you leave the room, don't you imagine that your employees will make the best decision based on how you want them to think or want them to treat the customer or move the sales forward? Well, they don't always know what you're thinking. But if they understood the values and that is ingrained in them over and over and over, to the point of when you leave the room, your employees know how to make that decision and you trust them to do it. You've empowered them. Imagine what the company would do if this happens over and over again. Imagine what would happen as your leadership and your team feels completely aligned to each other through the values, and those decisions that they have to make are made because they understand they're in alignment with the values of the company, which you help shape. Back to the interview with Michael. I love that idea. And if people did that, I think in customer service, how you would treat your mom and pop, and that would be fantastic, right? I want to, dive into something. You talked about the values and you listed them off. Transparency is one that comes up quite a bit in fast growth companies. And I talk about it on the stages that I go to back when I used to speak on stages. But you were talking to me and sharing with me how you actually use transparency inside the organization, the day-to-day. We were looking at your executive leadership team meetings. Take us back to why transparency is important at that team level. And then we'll talk about, what we're actually going to do with it.
Sure. So what we found is, these executive team meetings are very, very important. We've got folks worried about technology. We've got folks worried about our team on a human basis. We've got folks who are, in the back office, but doing the accounting work and remittances that are very important to keep our clients happy. We've got people thinking about growth, people thinking about real estate. And so when we all come together, we need to very quickly be able to sync up and know what's on everybody's mind and what are some of the big issues that might permeate through all the different teams. And so for us, it's really important to understand where everyone else is. And we, in addition to just the power of articulate communication across the team, we really want to know where everybody is at that moment at the meeting. And so we do a process. I think it's, I don't think we're the only ones to do this, but it's called checking in. And, at the beginning of every executive committee meeting and other meetings that we have in the company, we go around the table and we ensure that everybody knows where everybody else is at that moment. So it's as simple as I just had a great weekend. I was out in the sun, spent a lot of time with the kids. I'm feeling super energized, all the way to, a loved one passed away. I'm worried about the health of somebody. I didn't have a very good weekend. I feel buried by work right now. And by going around the table and hearing from everybody, where everyone else is at that moment. And it really helps to understand how much you can expect to get out of the other people around the table. While we'd like to think that we can get 100% of everybody all the time, it's just not realistic. And to know that, person number 3 around the table is having a hard time really helps to set expectations and really understand why they might be a little lethargic or not as aggressive or a little out of their game. And it's just helpful as we, try to problem solve and think through things. If person number 3 is really important from a technology perspective and we have a tech question and they're not on their A game, we might save that topic till another week so that person can really provide their 100%. It's been very helpful.
I know we talked about the check-in piece to that, but you also do an icebreaker. You gave me an example. It's Father's Day coming up when we record this. Your most recent leadership team, what did you ask?
We went around the table and talked about the first memory we have of our fathers. And it was great. It wasn't all positive. We had, a lot of people had, very fond and positive memories. Everybody had fond memories of their father. But the first memory might not be positive. And so it's not meant to be kind of a hokey, hey, everybody needs to feel good around the table question. It's really more helps us to continuously get to know each other better and better every time we meet. And it's been helpful. It's really, we've got a fairly diverse team from ages and backgrounds and to every week get to know just a little bit more about everybody on a prescribed basis. It's been very, very helpful.
Hold on for a second. You might be thinking that, asking questions like, what's the best memory for your father? Or what do you like to eat for a snack? Those are a waste of time in the meeting. But let me remind you that we're here not just to get the work done as machines, but to connect with each other, relate to each other. One of the books I read recently is The $1 Trillion Coach. A guy named Bill Campbell is a legend in Silicon Valley. And one of the things he suggested that Steve Jobs and the Apple team do is to take a moment early in the meeting to talk about personal stuff, to talk about the kids, talk about the baseball or the football or the ballet, whatever it may be, but to take a moment to get personal. And the time was well spent because the team felt connected, they felt understood, and they felt like people cared. Isn't that an important part of leadership? Apple couldn't have been wrong. They were one of the fastest growing companies, most innovative. And even Steve Jobs, who's not known for his stellar leadership capabilities, agreed with the fact that people need to feel connected. Bill Campbell brought that to him. I bring it to you. And hopefully you will adopt something like this. If you do, make sure you let me know. I'd love to know how it's working for you. Back to the interview with Michael. So Michael, we got 2 things that you kick off the meeting with. We've got this icebreaker. We got a check-in. And I know the answer to this, but I know our audience is kind of curious. How long does all this take on a typical week to week basis?
Yeah, it definitely depends. With respect to the icebreaker, there are various levels of icebreaker. So, it can be as simple as, what's your favorite snack food, to when was the last time you cried and why? And as you can imagine, talking about Twinkies versus, a difficult time with your spouse or whatever, obviously can take different amounts of time. So, it's, um, they're all helpful. We probably end up somewhere in the middle most of the time, not talking about snack foods or really deep emotional issues. But typically, it's anywhere from a couple minutes per person to it could be, one person could end up talking for 10 minutes. So we could end up a half hour into a meeting before the meeting starts. It's not. It's for the executive committee meetings. We can dig deeper. We schedule a little more time. We actually start a little earlier than our typical day for these, so that um, we don't end up you know buried even more at the end of this meeting. But it really is the best use of time at that moment, to continue to get closer to each other, understand how each other works, and really understand where they are at that moment.
I wanted to bring that up here today because I think a lot of people are looking for ways to increase connection. They're looking for ways to increase alignment, and they want to focus on how to do it within the context of just the business talk. And it's so hard to do it that way. Michael, you've seen this. I know I asked you this, but you've been doing this for years and you have kept doing it because it's working. What are the benefits that you see in the way that people collaborate and the way that people trust each other by having these moments of the check-ins and these icebreaker questions?
I think it enables people to be real with each other. So we had a meeting a few weeks ago where when we went around the table, it was largely positive, and maybe the fourth person who checked in had a real problem with something I did the previous week, and they needed to get it off their chest. And it kind of, it was a real slap. I mean, slap in the face has a negative connotation, but kind of a real wake up. It was a blind spot for me. I didn't realize that what I had done was so negatively impactful to this person. And it was a huge growth moment for me. But, with that ability to have, to proactively say, what is on your mind? What's bothering you? I don't know that necessarily would have come up in a different context. And so, because that happened there in front of everybody, I had to answer for why I did what I did. And, and I don't know that we necessarily resolved it. We've chatted since. And I think it's now resolved, but it was it kind of highlights the transparency of our working relationships as a team. And now I don't ever have to wonder. We have these meetings weekly and sometimes more frequently, but I never have to wonder more than a week what someone's thinking or if something's bothering them, because it comes out in these meetings. And it really just takes, some of the long-term interpersonal friction that can build up over time, and it just releases it during these meetings. We also, you'd asked earlier how we permeate this through the rest of the organization. We have weekly check-ins with everybody on the team. Everyone on the team is expected to take 15 minutes a week and let the people they work with most know where they are and what's on their mind and what they've been up to and what they've accomplished. And then the person who manages that person takes 5 minutes to review all of that and provide some counter feedback. And having that every week kind of eliminates the need for an annual review or, like longer period updates where you might be surprised to hear that someone that it has an issue with the way you're working. And so it's just, it's really a kind of a real-time feedback loop that we think releases a lot of the tension and friction that can sometimes build up in an organization, and allows us to hopefully be at our best for longer periods of time.
Is there any technology that you use to streamline that? And I'm not saying that we have to, but are you collecting this data, or is it just a face-to-face moment for 15 minutes?
It's, I was, yeah, it is a technology. It's called 15.5. It's an app.
Yeah.
It's been fantastic for us. It's virtually eliminated the need to have extensive and, potentially difficult conversations once a year or twice a year, because everybody kind of knows where everybody is all the time. And it's been a awesome tool for us.
Well, I want to dive into some other aspects of this. We mainly talk about leadership and culture. What are some of the other things that we haven't addressed today on what keeps the team aligned, what keeps you moving forward toward your growth goals?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it all comes down to communication and ensuring that everybody on the team is aware of what we're thinking at the executive committee. And everybody has meetings with their team. Obviously, I don't want the casual listener to this to come across that all we do is meet all day, because we actually have very few meetings compared to the amount of actual work that gets done. But the meetings are very productive. And it's really intended so that everybody from, the people in the executive committee, to the corporate staff, to the people in the stores, to the people in our processing centers, everywhere around the business, we want them to know where we are in our growth curve. We did 2018 was a massive year for us. We added almost 50% more stores than we had before. And so 2019 was not necessarily a growth year in terms of number of stores we opened, but it was probably even more of a growth year in terms of digesting the massive growth that we executed on in 2018. And we really needed everybody to know where we were at all times. And so there were a lot of growing pains, from technology to ensuring that the clients and our guests were getting the same experience that they had always gotten when we were a smaller business. But, check-ins, email communication, our town halls that we have periodically, more frequently recently. Those are all ways that for those who really want to be informed of what's going on at the corporate level, at the executive level, they can kind of tune in, better understand it, ask questions, and then go on with their day and feel like they're a part of a bigger organization.
If you happen to be listening to this video on YouTube, make sure you hit the thumbs up if you like this content. Subscribe now so you don't miss an episode. And if you want to make sure you get notified when we drop another video, hit the bell notification button. I'd love to keep continuing to serve you to be the leader that your team craves. As the company's grown fast, I know you're a co-founder, you probably have a strong team around you. What's one of the things that you had to overcome in order to be the leader that you are today?
The whole feedback, like taking very direct and immediate feedback, has been, was difficult at first. Now I don't know how I ever lived without it. But when we first got started, before we opened the doors, our first day that we were open, my two co-founders and I solicited a bunch of friends to come and role play customer interactions. And of the three co-founders that started the business, one of us, not me, had a tremendous amount of experience in the car business. And so we would have a friend come in, they would act the customer, we would act the CarLotz coach, and we would walk them through an experience. And my co-founder, Aaron, who has just a ton of experience in the space, he would lay it out, and we would not do a good job. And he was very direct about it and very brutal about it. And it was, it could be embarrassing. It could be, it could hit upon some soft spots, some areas of growth. And it was tough. It was tough to continuously take gut punches, but it definitely makes you a stronger person and ultimately what we realized is that most people, even though it's uncomfortable, they want that direct feedback. They don't want to guess how they're doing. They want to know how they're doing from someone who knows what they're talking about. And so as long as as long as it's clear that this is the type of place where you're going to get direct feedback and it's going to be immediate, you learn to accept it, and it becomes less embarrassing or hurtful, and it becomes more empowering, and it allows you to grow as a professional and as a human being. And it's great. And the feedback goes both ways. So if you give me feedback and I don't agree with it, I will give you feedback on the feedback. And ultimately we'll both not have to wonder what the other person is thinking, which allows us to really focus on getting the job done.
Well, Michael, thanks for being here. I'm smiling when I say this, but that's just another example of how important transparency is to you and the organization, the culture. And it's something that I've seen is very beneficial to organizations that embrace that. So I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and insight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Another fantastic interview here on the podcast. I love this conversation about increasing team alignment with your leadership team. When you think about the ways that you guys interact to each other, do you wish it was a little bit better? Do you imagine a little bit more camaraderie, a little bit more support, empathy? Whatever's missing, you have to be intentional about bringing it in. It's not always about just the work, just the metrics, and how you guys are getting results. It's about how you guys relate to each other, communicate, how you feel connected and understood. Now, your job as the founder, CEO, and really someone who's meant to align this team so that it's optimized at the highest level, is to figure out what needs to shift inside you, not to blame others, but to look at what's going on inside your own thinking. What's keeping you from creating that alignment that you want? Well, that's where I come in. If you're not quite sure what it is, make sure you reach out to me, Gene@GeneHammett.com, or you can send me a message through my Clarity Call. You can go to GeneHammett.com/clarity-call, and you can have time with me to talk about this issue, the breakdown that you want to find, or the breakthrough that you want to create inside your company. Just go to GeneHammett.com/clarity. When you think about moving to the next level, make sure you think of me, make sure you think of this podcast, and as always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.